Ladies and gentlemen, we go deeper into the science now. 3 short pitches of top scientists of Wageningen University and Research Center. And I will introduce now the first speaker of this afternoon, Lisa Becking. Lisa is a tropical marine ecologist, something I always would like to be, with the Institute of Marine Resources Ecosystem Studies, IMARES, one of the Wageningen institutions. And she studied biology at the University of Amsterdam. She worked at Tokyo University as a fellow of the Japan Prize Winners Program, and she conducted her PhD research at Naturalis and Leiden University. Presently, she is a NWO Rubicon postdoc researcher at UC Berkeley, and in July she will start a project funded by the NWO Veni Fellowship, a personal individual grant. She has a long-held interest in ecological and evolutionary processes contributing to the formation of marine biodiversity patterns. A major focus of her research on marine lakes, islands of the sea. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank Director Magnificus for inviting me here today to speak about fascinating marine biodiversity. So, this one doesn't work, but this one does. So, 2/3 of the globe is covered by the sea, yet not even 1/3 of marine species have been described so far. This major gap in knowledge is illustrative of our limited understanding of marine ecosystems. And this is also why I believe very strongly that we should take the fascination of nature that we have and let it lead us to go out and explore these uncharted waters, and that this exploration will subsequently lead to a deeper understanding of marine ecosystems and novel insights. So I'm happy to see that at Wageningen, there's a great focus on marine research through various research institutes that you see here, as well as through the academic curriculum where there's a possibility to specialize in marine biology during your master's. So today, I am going to highlight 3 research projects that fit within the theme of fascinating nature. And I'm specialized in tropical marine biology. And sort of the overarching questions that drive my research are, first of all, how are species distributed over geographic space? And subsequently, what are the ecological and evolutionary processes that underlie the formation of tropical marine biodiversity? Now, an area where I've done a lot of research is Indonesia. And this lies at the heart of the Coral Triangle, which is the global center of maximum marine biodiversity. Now, the processes that keep this high diversity in place, they really remain much of a mystery to us. What we do know is that what we do see based on research from the past 20 or 30 years is that there's great genetic structuring within populations of species and rapid species turnover within communities of species over small spatial scales. So what the results of these studies would imply is that isolating mechanisms over small spatial scales are very important in contributing to the formation of the biodiversity patterns that we see. However, many questions remain. First of all, what are barriers to dispersal for marine organisms? And once species are isolated, how quickly do they adapt and evolve, and under what circumstances? So when terrestrial biologists are faced with these kinds of questions, they've often turned to island systems, because islands provide an explicit spatial and temporal context in which you can study species distributions or biodiversity patterns. And it's in this line of thought that the major focus of my research is on marine lakes, islands of sea, if you will. So I approach marine lakes really as sort of giant natural laboratories in which allow us to study how communities of species form through time and under what circumstances. Now, marine lakes are small bodies of seawater. They're entirely surrounded by land, so there's no surface connection to the sea. Yet there is a connection through subterranean fissures and channels, and as such, the organisms within the lakes are of marine origin. And what's great about the lakes is that we know how old they are. They were all formed about 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. So when I started working on marine lakes, I literally had to go out and explore Indonesia to locate lakes. And I did that by a variety of means. And these efforts resulted in the discovery of over 50 lakes new to science. Subsequently, we went into the lakes and documented and quantified the diversity that we found there. And here you have a couple of examples of the very beautiful and unique diversity that you have in the lakes. And so what we first were interested in was really, so what is the effect of this kind of isolation on small spatial scales for tropical marine biodiversity? And what we found is that both the genetic diversity and the species diversity within communities was significantly different within the lakes compared to the adjacent sea, which are open systems. So even though these lakes are very young from an evolutionary perspective, just 7,000 or 10,000 years old, 7,000 to 10,000 years old, even though they're relatively young, there's still unique diversity that has adapted to the marine lake setting. So this is in part due to the physical isolation of the marine lake setting, but also due to the environment within the lakes. So the environment of the lakes is actually what's really interesting, because the lakes represent natural states of possible scenarios that have been predicted by, that have been predicted by the IPCC for the year 2100, namely with higher water temperature and lower pH. So keeping this in mind, the next questions that we will be tackling are really how has diversity adapted in response to past and to current environments? And with this information, we hope to gain insight into how communities of species will respond to future environmental changes. So we'll be doing this by again, looking at these lakes as natural laboratories or large natural experiments in environmental change, where we'll be using population genomic methods as well as sediment cores. And the sediment cores provide us this historic archive of how diversity and environment has changed over time since the formation of the lake. And now I'm going to make a major leap over to the coral reefs around the 6 islands of the Dutch Caribbean. This is an area where I've done a number of projects for IMARIS, which is which is a knowledge institute of Wageningen. And so I'd like to highlight one project, not only because it's a great picture, but just to illustrate that we're interested in the geographic distribution of species, but also how the communities are distributed with depth. And here we assess the diversity of sponges and soft corals along the photic zone down to depths of 200 meters. And what we found was that the species communities of the coral reefs were completely different from those from the communities below 50 meters. So basically, there's no connectivity between these depths. And this is relevant information when you're trying to set up a management plan. What is more, because so few people go down there and document the diversity, we found many species new to science. And there's one more thing I would like to highlight, is that in all of our explorations and expeditions, there are always many collaborators, and we always make certain that there are a lot of spin-off projects. And one example from this project is that all the samples that we collected form a major part of a PhD project of Indra, who is now doing his PhD with Detmer Sipkema here at Wageningen. And they're looking at the genes that are involved in the biosynthesis of antibacterial compounds that are actually produced by the sponges and the microbes inside them. And so marine ecosystems are not only the sessile invertebrates, such as the corals and the sponges, but they also encompass the larger migratory animals that frequent the reefs, such as sea turtles. And so one project that literally just started this month that we're working on has the aim of filling major gaps in knowledge in population demographics, migration routes, and habitats use of sea turtles in the Dutch Caribbean. And we're going to be doing that using satellite trackers and population genomic analyses. And so with this project, it really is a strong collaboration between universities, NGOs, and is also supported by the government in order to set up really a biologically and scientifically sound conservation management plan. So on that, in order to do these kind of biodiversity studies, you really need a diversity of collaborators. And here are a couple of key players, but of course there are many more people involved in these projects. Pardon me. And to conclude, I'd like to leave you with a quote of one of my favorite authors and fellow biologists. Thank you for your attention.